In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in Black and White emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our...
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of America in Black and White, where we are painting conversations on the canvas of America. Tonight we have a very special guest. We've got journalist Joe Sams with us tonight. Joe Sam is an award-winning television journalist hailing from Opelousas, Louisiana, with a dynamic career marked by notable achievements and an unwavering dedication to his craft. Joe's journey in the world of media and communications is nothing short of inspiring. His educational foundations and early career consisted of Joe's academic journey, began at Southern University A&M College, where he earned his bachelor's degree in mass communications in 2013. During his time at Southern University, Joe showcased his leadership skills and passion for advocacy for serving as NAACP president. He also honored his broadcasting abilities as a radio talk show host for the Bluff radio station. In spring 2012, he became an initiate of the Alpha Sigma chapter of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, further cementing his commitment to excellence and community service. Professional rise and continued education. Immediately after graduating, Joe dove into the world of news reporting in Monroe, Louisiana. His exceptional talent in broadcasting and journalism quickly garnered industry recognition, propelling him to anchor positions in some of the nation's top markets. Demonstrating a commitment to lifelong learning, Joe pursued and obtained 2 master's degrees from Grand Canyon University, one in organizational leadership and the other in communications. In his diverse roles and impactful contributions throughout his career, Joe has worked as a television news journalist and host in various markets, including Louisiana, Florida, Michigan, Ohio, and Houston. His role as entertainment host and reporter for KPRC2's Houston Life stands out, where he interviewed and covered numerous top celebrities, community leaders, politicians, luxury real estate, restaurants, and events. Seeking to expand his horizons, Joe took on the role of Director of Communications at Houston Community College. There, he successfully integrated his public relations and marketing expertise, significantly contributing to the institution's success. Currently, Joe serves as a multimedia journalist for the historic Texas Southern University and as a senior communications specialist for the city of Houston. His entrepreneur endeavors and professional affiliations. In addition to his illustrious career, Joe has ventured into entrepreneurship with the establishment of his media company, Joe Sam Media Consulting. Through this platform, he assists aspiring and current journalists in navigating the industry to achieve successful careers. Joe is a proud member of several prestigious organizations, including the Houston Association of Black Journalists, National Association of Black Journalists, NAACP, and the National Society of Leadership and Success. His involvement in these groups underserves his commitment to fostering diversity, leadership, and professional excellence within the field of journalism. Joe Sam's career is a testament to the power of dedication, continuous learning, and a passion for impactful storytelling from his early days in Louisiana to his current roles in Houston. Joe's journey exemplifies what it means to be a trailblazer in television journalism and media consulting. His contributions continue to inspire and pave the way for the next generation of journalists. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to bring to the show Mr. Joe Sam. Hello, sir. We can't hear you. No.
Okay, how about now?
Okay. Yes. Okay. So I need to use. Okay, there we go.
Awesome. All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for that. I'm sorry about the technical difficulties, but I appreciate you for having me on, and I am super excited to chat with you today. And an amazing introduction that you presented for me. I was a long one, but it was an amazing introduction.
Well, I appreciate that. Is there anything you'd like to add to your bio before we jump into the show?
I know you covered all the bases. I did. I also was a instructor at the Ohio Media School, so that's actually where I got into my teaching and being able to really work with a lot of the youth in the area, and also what inspired me to write my book. The first book that I just published, which has been doing absolutely amazing, is called "Keeping News from Breaking You," and it's available now on Barnes and Noble. So those are just some more of the actions that have been happening right now within my career and within my life that has been really significant to the community that I serve.
Oh, wow. Well, I definitely appreciate that. And, I'm sure that the audience is going to be looking forward to hearing all those good things, because all of those things are things that's definitely going to be some motivational, inspirational things for people to take away from this.
Absolutely.
As we start and we jump into the show, let's talk about your journalism career. Tell us what inspired you to pursue a career in journalism.
Absolutely. So I originally went to school to be a attorney. So I love the aspect of doing research and just really fighting for those that I believe are looking for justice. So that was the first initial thought of what I was going to do as my career. But I got my internship within a courtroom, and that completely turned into another motivation. So I knew that the courtroom wasn't for me, but I knew that I still wanted to do research and I wanted to be able to communicate and talk. My nickname when I was younger was Storytime. My auntie gave me that name because I would always tell stories, make up stories, and I wanted everybody to listen to me tell this story. So she called me Storytime. And after talking to one of my mentors, they said, you know what, since law is not working out for you, have you ever thought about a career in journalism? And I didn't think about it at first, but as I started to see what was happening in the world, and then when it hit home personally, I had a 2-year-old nephew who unfortunately passed away due to child abuse. And from that moment, we wanted to get the story out as far as what was happening with the DCFS system and what was happening within the home that he lived in. And we had a journalist come and they wanted to tell our story. So they spoke with myself, they spoke with my mother, and that story sparked a wide range debate within Louisiana. And it actually signified and solidified the reason to why I wanted to be a journalist. It made sure that everyone was informed about what was happening within the DCFS system, the injustices that were taking place. And that story really helped a lot of children that were dealing with child abuse and not getting protected within DCFS. It saved a lot of them. So unfortunately, my nephew passed away, but that one story really saved a lot of other children. And when I saw the power of journalism and actually what it done for so many other families and how it helped heal our family, I said, this is going to be the career for me. And that was the first initiation into journalism for me.
Oh, wow. So can you describe your journey into the field of journalism?
Absolutely. I was a little shy at first because I didn't like my voice. I'm from Louisiana, as you mentioned. So a lot of the words that I was saying, they weren't coming out right. I couldn't say any TH words. So everything was coming out as dat. So I was saying it with D-A-T, and there was there. So it was D-H-E-R-E, and all of my TH words were horrible. So my accent was a huge challenge for me. So I was a little nervous getting into journalism, but you mentioned in my bio that I was a radio host for the Bluff radio station. That's where I initially started. And it helped me work on my language. It helped me get better at pronouncing a lot of things that I didn't know how to pronounce. And it helped me with getting comfortable speaking with people in front of a camera. And then I was posed to host with BET, the Black Entertainment Network, when they were doing the BET Black College Tours. So I did the audition and I was able to be chosen for the host for that. And that was my first TV job. And from there, I started working within all of the different TV stations within Louisiana while I was still in school. So I got my first job at WAFB back in Louisiana in Baton Rouge as a news content specialist. And if people don't know what that is, all I did was roll a prompter for the anchors to read. But I wanted to do better. I wanted to do more. So I worked with them and I said I wanted to maybe become a photographer. They taught me how to do photography and I took on a photographer position. I told them I wanted to learn how to write better. So they showed me what a producer does. And I ended up getting a producer role. And from there, I navigated my way from behind the scenes to in front of the camera. And that has just sparked the journey from there. I mean, long story short, from that moment in Louisiana, it just charged up my career. And I went on to different markets, different cities, to where I am now here in Houston, where I was a entertainment journalist for KPRC. And that was my dream job. So I was able to achieve that goal of being able to do that and tell stories that really advocated for the community and really made a big difference and showcased the positive side of TV journalism within our communities.
So as they call you storyteller, can you tell us, like, compared to that time and you getting that first position, how did you stay inspired? What was so inspiring about that made you want to continue into journalism?
Absolutely. So it was the people, really. It was the community. When you see something that can actually change someone's entire mind frame is what made me continue on within journalism. When I was working as an anchor and reporter in Michigan, I had a show called Missing in Michigan. And that show really touched a lot of people, especially within the Black community, because a lot of times whenever young Black teens go missing, their cases usually go cold. And the police there, they just were not looking for this specific teen. So I went back to the family. I did a little bit more investigating myself and found out more information. Where were they last seen? Who were they last with? Things that the police officers might have missed. And from us telling that story more and more and getting more attention from the community, police opened the case back up. They ended up finding the individual. It was unfortunately that they were deceased, but it brought so much closure to the family because they were searching for their loved one for years and years. And just from that one story was able to help that family heal. And that inspired me just to continue to do good within the community and to continue to do so for those that look like me within our communities of color. And that journalism really continued to touch more families and touch more people and help more people in a positive way.
Oh wow. That's something else. I mean, you know, I always wondered, like, you know, when they have investigative journalism, you know, like what you was doing. Can you tell me, is that one of those parts of media or mainstream media that it has its own, it takes on its own thing to where you guys have more like of a leeway to pursue the story and you push it and push it and push it and you can just do that? Or do they tell you you have some part where you just can't do it anymore?
Absolutely. For those particular stories, you are given a certain amount of time to flip the story. On a day-to-day basis, if you talk to any other journalists, we're usually having to turn a story on that same day. And you only get a couple of hours to work on it, and you have to be ready to go live at 5 o'clock or whatever time the show starts. So for the investigative journalism stories, they're going to take more time. They're going to take more research, which is what I talked about in the beginning about me loving doing research and really just finding out more information and more clues of what happened and what went wrong. So for that story, I believe each story I was given about a month to work on. And the more leads I got and the more information I got, it was up to my news director to determine if they wanted to continue to keep that story going. So when they saw how much positivity it did within the community, they said, you know what, work on as many investigative stories as you would like. You have the power and the freedom to do as many missing in Michigan stories to make sure that these families get closure. And I did so. So some stories would take a month, other stories would take maybe 3 weeks to get more information and to even find some of these individuals. Not all of them were sad. We were able to bring back home, I believe, a total of 5 to 10 different children that were missing from those communities. And they saw the story on air and they saw how it was being shared on social media, and they didn't even know that they were reported missing. So they came back home after seeing their face on TV and that their family was looking for them. So they gave me as much time as I needed to work on those stories, but I also wanted to be in the mind frame of getting the stories done quickly, because I know that these families were looking for closure and they were looking for some support and some help. So I wanted to make sure I was doing so in a quick mind frame, but also making sure that I wasn't skipping over any details or any information. And that's what journalism is. You don't want to report things that aren't factual just to try and make a deadline or just to try and get it out there as quick as possible. You really want to dive into the information that you're given and really be able to tell the story and what's happening and what call of action that we're sending out to the community to also lend in support.
Well, tell us about this. What has been your most memorable story to cover as a journalist?
That's a good question because there's been so many different stories. I would have to say I just did one that was just recently. It was at Texas Southern University, which is a historic Black university, historic HBCU here in Houston, Texas. And I had did so many other stories that were inspiring to me, but this one here really touched me because it was one that changed the lives of so many kids. And this was within the Ocean of Soul marching band. This story I actually submitted to the Emmy Awards. So I'll be finding out if that story it will be nominated for an Emmy Award at the end of this month. But Beyonce, who is a huge superstar, she's also from here, from Houston, Texas, Third Ward. And she came back here to perform for the Netflix Christmas special on Christmas Day. And she asked the Ocean of Soul to perform with her. So I was there to capture the entire story from the moment the announcement was made throughout their rehearsals to the actual performance. And although it was an entertainment story, just being able to perform with an artist like that changed the culture at Texas Southern University. It opened up so many different kids to the arts and music and entertainment. And it really gave the Ocean of Soul marching band a push that they needed. It gave them the motivation, the inspiration that they needed to continue going. Sometimes their musicianship wasn't at its best, but being able to be rewarded with a performance like that and being able to perform with the musical artists such as Beyonce really inspired them. And it not only inspired them, but it inspired me as well. So this story, it was a short film. It came out to be about 15 minutes long. And that has to be one of the biggest pieces, one of the biggest projects that I've been a part of and been involved to work on. So I would have to say that one right there. That's the most recent, and it's one of the most inspiring to me.
So, how do you approach storytelling in your articles?
It's always an approach for me to where I have to draw people in. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to bore people. Within journalism, you want to make sure that we're always told to get a headline out there that draws people in, that captures their attention. My approach is to always make sure that whatever I'm putting out there as a headline is something that is going to be a reflection of the community that we're talking about. A lot of my journalism, a lot of my projects that I've worked on, a lot of the stories that I've worked on have been those of communities of color. Majority of the time, whenever I go to different stations, I'm the only Black journalist on air. So whenever it comes time to do any types of stories on the community, I make sure I focus on the communities of color so that I can make sure that their voice is being heard. And my approach to that is to, first off, be a part of the community. You can't tell the stories of the community if you're not a part of it yourself. So I make sure that I'm there at the community meetings. I make sure that I'm there at the town halls. I make sure I'm hearing out everyone's concerns and what they're worried about, what they're excited about, what they would like to see happen within their community, and what they want their journalists to talk about. What would they like for me to report on? So my approach is always community first. I can't talk to an audience of people that don't know what I'm speaking about or don't trust me to tell their stories. So that's my first approach, is to gain the trust of the community, make sure that I'm writing to where I capture their attention and I keep their attention. We're living in an age right now where a lot of people's time spans are really short. They don't want to sit there and read an entire book. They want their information really quick, fast, and in a hurry. And I make sure that I do that, but doing so within the right information that they need. Here are the facts. Here's the who, what, when, where, and how, and why, and what you can do to change that, or what you can do to be a part of it. So that's the way I approach all of my stories. And I make sure that after I am done with that story, that there's follow-ups, that it's not a one-time thing. A lot of reporters, they break a story, then they move on to the next story, and then they move on to the next. And you never see them go back to the first story that they reported on. I like to go back in and check on my community. When within my family, they don't just call me once every year. They're calling me every other week and checking in on me, following up to see, hey, I know you had a bad week last week. How's this week looking for you? That's what I do within my journalism. If I'm reporting on a community that has been affected by an increase in taxes and they can't pay for their groceries, if I did that story that week, I'm going back the next week or the next 2 weeks after another bill was passed to see if anything changed. How can we help? How can we make sure that you're doing okay? So that's my approach to journalism. If I'm not helping, if there's not a call to action, then I'm not going to do the story.
Well, you said something that really caught my attention because I find it to be very relative. When you were talking about if you're not from the community, how can you report on the community?
Absolutely.
Can you tell me what makes some of these news stations, and when I say this, I don't mean this to come out the wrong way, but just being factual. What makes them think white people can cover Black folk?
And that's has always been a question to me. Because they just don't understand. Like I mentioned, they don't understand the community, and I don't know why a lot of these news directors or producers feel as if there's an issue in the Black community, we're going to send them out there. And it's surprising, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because there was a situation back when I was in Columbus, Ohio. It was during the time of George Floyd, and a lot of these reporters who were not black reporters, they were going out to cover these protests, and one of our anchors, who was also going back and forth with the reporter as they were live on the scene for one of the protests, he referred to some of the black protesters out there as animals. And the station continued to let him broadcast. I was watching from home because I was off by that time. I was on a different shift. And I couldn't believe that that came out of his mouth live on air. And from that, the community, the black community, called for his suspension. They suspended him with pay. And I didn't understand that either until the fuel died down. And they didn't understand exactly what black people were actually angry about. All they were seeing was that, oh, there's businesses being destroyed. They're not following the police officers' orders. But they didn't understand what we were really upset about, because, again, like I mentioned, they do not care to research what the community is going through. Why did George Floyd's death, why was it so significant to the black community and people of color? And that was the issue, that with a lot of these news directors, they don't understand that. And that's why it's always important to have a journalist of color within these stations, so that we can advocate for those communities, and we can, I hate to use the word educate, but so we can educate them on what it is that we do when we talk to these communities. I can cover any community, but I make sure that I'm covering the communities of color, because I know that my white counterparts are not going to do the type of job that I'm going to do, because I know these communities. I know what we're going through, because I'm going through it, because I am a person of color. I feel the same emotions. And if you can't relate when it comes to emotions with these people, they're not going to trust you, and they're not going to give you the story that you need. A lot of these white reporters, they don't care about relating, and they don't care about what's going on. They just want to get the story done and move on to the next. And that's, to me, inappropriate. So I always advocate for having black journalists within every single station that's within this country, which is another reason and another mission for the National Association of Black Journalists. They make sure that black reporters, black TV personnel are within these stations, so that we can educate our white counterparts on doing better and being better.
Well, I wish that such a thing could happen, because I don't think that'll ever be, because those people can never relate to what it is to cover the black story, because they are not relatable to that.
Exactly.
So what I want to know is, you being the only black journalist in a lot of these places, what was that like for you?
It was rough, to be honest with you. It was really hard. It's because like we just talked about, because some of these white reporters can't relate to our communities. I couldn't relate to that station environment and that culture that they had. Some things that they would talk about, I wouldn't have a clue what they were talking about, because I didn't watch those TV shows. I didn't grow up the way that some of them grew up. So I couldn't relate to what they were talking about. But I had to find a way to become a chameleon and to be able to fit with some of what they were saying. And it was vice versa. Some of the things that I would talk about, they wouldn't have a clue what I was saying. So a lot of times, whenever there's MLK Day that comes around, or Black History Month comes around, I was always the go-to person to be on air for, oh, Joe, we're going to give you a special for Black, and to showcase all the black stories for Black History Month. And I would always refuse to do so, because I would tell them, well, Black History Month is every month to me. So this month is nothing special from what I'm going to be doing year round. I'm always going to highlight the communities of color, not just for the month of February. Same thing for MLK. I want everyone to be able to be a part of this, because if you don't learn from what we've been through, you're never going to be able to relate to what we're going through right now. And it was a challenge. It was always a challenge being the only black reporter at these stations, or the only black anchor at these stations. And you had to watch your back, because some of your counterparts and some of your colleagues didn't want to see you elevate in some of these spaces. So you not only had to be 100% at your job, but 150%. While
Mhm.
they could be 50% at their job and the other 50% they didn't care. I had to
Mhm.
care, love my job, make sure I wasn't missing any details. I would write a story and then go back and proofread the story probably 5 times just to make sure that there was not one error within the story, because I knew if there were an error, I could be written up or I could be on the chopping block. While
Wow.
my counterparts, they can make as many errors as they please and still be elevated to anchor status. And it was hard, but we have to continue to do what we do, and it's something that still goes on till this very day.
Mm. So, can you tell us, like, in just reporting your stories, like, especially like in this climate that we're in right now, okay? And we've got an occupier there in D.C. that's occupying the people's house, that's doing a hell of a job of just screwing up the whole world.
Exactly.
And so, my thing is with mainstream media refusing to do its job. And so you have platforms like this that may be in smaller numbers, but are growing exponentially around the country, now around the world. And people trying to get these different stories out. How do especially at this point in time, work stories like that in to make sure that they are front page number one, uno, that people know that this is what's happening? How do
Yeah,
you do that?
absolutely. It's always going to be a fight, and what you have to make sure you do is that you gain the trust of these people that you're working with, because and even if you do have it, there's always going to be a moment in time where the person that's in the White House doesn't like what you're saying, and you get fired the next day.
Mhm.
We've seen it happen with Joy Reid. We've seen it happen with Don Lemon. Now they're all on YouTube. They're all
Right.
starting to YouTube shows. Same thing with Roland Martin. He was at the top of his game, and they couldn't stand some of the things that he was talking about because he was telling so much of truths and
Right.
and so many facts. And they said, "Oh, we can't have this, so we're going to have to get rid of him." But as you can see, they still couldn't get rid of him because he's now created his own platform. So
Mhm.
sometimes you have to create your own spaces and your own platforms within these stations so that you can get the message out. Some of these producers, they don't want your story in the A block, which is the top block. The A block is where all the big stories go, where your breaking news and your most important information goes. They don't want those stories in the A block because they know that it might rub the viewers the wrong way, especially if your viewers are more so catered to the Republican side and
Mhm.
and our Trump supporters. Um,
Mhm.
they're not going to want to hear some of the stuff that you are saying that's bad about him, and then you become the person of attack. But you have to prepare yourself for that. That would be the first thing that I would tell anyone. Make sure that you have tough alligator skin, because they're going to eat you up in the comments. No matter if you're not saying anything good about him, they're going to get on their keyboards and call for the station to suspend you because they don't like what you're saying. But you have to have trust within your supervisor, whoever is the leader of that station, to let them know that you are the journalist that's going to tell the truth, and that you're also not afraid to leave.
Mhm.
And if you don't want to hear what I have to say and have me report on this factual information, I'm not here to be the viewer's best friend. I'm here to give them the most important information that they need, and factual information, whether they like it or not. And
Mhm.
you have to be okay with leaving. That's why I would always tell some of the people that I mentor, make sure you have a backup plan, because one day the station might like you, and then the next day, because you reported on something bad that's happening within the White House, within the current leader that we have, and you might be trying to look for another job because the station's going to be getting rid of you. So you have to be prepared for that as well. And I would just say, as long as you feel that you've done your job and that you presented the facts that you know are factual, there shouldn't be no embarrassment about what happened with the fallout. I always make sure I have a plan B, because if I fall, I'm going to fall on the Serta mattress. I'm not going to fall on the ground.
So, what challenges have you faced while reporting on sensitive topics?
like I mentioned, I told you guys earlier about the anchor that was suspended for what he said on air. One of the challenges, and I face this all the time whenever I'm getting ready to report on something that I know it's going to rub the viewers the wrong way. I also find myself at facing suspension. Unlike the anchor that was suspended with pay, I was suspended without pay, and it was me covering the Black Lives Matter movement. And I mentioned one thing about the officers within Blue Lives Matter when they were talking about the Blue Lives Matter versus Black Lives Matter. A lot of the viewers didn't like that. That was one of the challenges that I had to face before I went on air. I had to tell myself, I had to have a talk with myself and said, if I go in here and report this, I can either do it one way and change my entire story so that I can appease the viewers and not myself and not my community. So it was a situation to where you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. So I can either appease one community and continue to be on air, or the community that I always supported and get suspended off air. And I chose to continue to making sure that I gave factual information about my community. And I was suspended for a week and a half, I believe, without pay. But fortunately, throughout that week, I was able to obtain my job in Houston, Texas. So during that week, I knew God had me protected, because right after that happened, I was contemplating back and forth on if I wanted to return to that station that had suspended me for doing my job. And they suspended me because the viewers didn't like that I was saying what I was saying about Blue Lives Matter versus Black Lives Matter. They didn't care for what I said at all. And I was good on one side because my community loved me for reporting the facts that so many people were afraid to report. But then on the other hand, I can't please everyone. And I knew that I had to make a choice on if I wanted to go back to the station or leave. And I decided to pack my belongings and head to Houston, Texas. So,
and so, you know what I say, smart man, because not speaking ill will of the folks in Columbus, Ohio, but their history precedes who they are, and
absolutely.
so they can't hide that.
Absolutely.
And regardless of the case, you could be in Columbus, Ohio, you could be in Lexington, Kentucky. They're the same way. Them people are very relatable because they are friends.
Absolutely.
They are friends. Everybody know everybody, and they're all cousins. They're kissing cousins.
And it was great when all loved me whenever I was reporting on, the entertainment and the festivals and the food. Oh, they couldn't get enough of that reporting. But as soon as I switched it up a notch and started reporting on real issues, now I became enemy number one. And that was just shocking to me, because I thought that the same people that were in my corner, they turned quickly. And that's something that you always have to expect as well as a person of color. One day you're best friends with them, and the next day you're enemies because they didn't like something that you said about someone that they respect. And that was an issue. That's a challenge that you're going to face every single day as a journalist, or even as a person that works in corporate America or wherever you work. It's a challenge that you're going to have to face, because you know that some people are going to like you one day and they're not going to like you the next day because of you basically presenting factual information, and they don't want to hear it because some people still live in that delusional mindset, and it's chosen delusional that they plan to do. They choose to be delusional. So you have to let them go on and live their life the way they want to live it. And I'd rather see things for as they are rather than seeing it one way. And that's the only way.
In your opinion, what is the role of a journalist in today's society?
The role of a journalist is that you're doing everything. So I would say your main responsibility as a journalist is to make sure that you are standing by the story that you are presenting. You're making sure that it's reflecting the people that you are serving within your community, and that it's factual and 100% correct. You're telling both sides of the story and not just one angle. You want to make sure that you're doing that. That's the primary role of a journalist, is to provide the community with information that's going to be beneficial to them. and factual to them, and not something that they are being misled by, because there's been a lot of misinformation within some of these national stations. You hear it pretty much every day on a lot of these national stations.
Ooh.
Information that's going out there, and they do it for ratings, and they do it to appease the viewers rather than giving them information that's actually beneficial and that can actually change the dynamics of what we're going through. Because right now we're going through what we're going through because there has been so much misinformation, and because they're appeasing these viewers rather than telling them the truth. And that's the issue with a lot of these journalists now. But that's the primary role of a journalist, is to purport the information, no matter how you feel the viewers are going to like it. You have to report as factual as you can make sure it is. And journalists right now are doing everything. That's why a lot of people are burnt out, and this industry is starting to fail. And a lot of people are getting their information, their news, from social media right now, and from YouTubers and bloggers, because journalists are being burnt out. They're not only the person that's on camera, but they're shooting their own material. They're writing their own material. They're editing their own material, and they have to do it all while also being underpaid and under-respected and undervalued. So you see a lot of people leaving the industry and going to other spectrums of communications. And I think that's going to be the issue right now, is that now people are going to have to rely on social media influencers and YouTubers in order to give them their information. But I love the fact that you're doing this right here, and that you're giving others the opportunity on your platform to share valuable information. And I think that that's going to be important in a day and age right now, when we have social media influencers that are being paid by different parties to say things that they want them to say. And then some of these influencers have thousands and thousands of followers, and them telling them giving them misinformation, now you've affected thousands of people that are then going to go and share that misinformation with thousands of other people. So it's important that we have other platforms like this here that's going to give them that truthful information, so that it can combat so much misinformation.
And so I just want to say this, just before we move on, is that in mainstream media, I think white America has done its damnedest. That's destroying the world. And they're destroying the world because they are in fear of lying, cheating, and stealing, and making themselves pretty much I'm supposed to get this, do that, or whatever have you, and not have no accountability. But because they've done that so much and the world has evolved, they now realize that that's not the way of the world. So rather than do the right thing, they'd rather burn this place to the ground, is what they're saying. But primarily what's going to happen is we're not going to let that happen, because we are the majority and always have been. But you see, as all of these platforms pick up, they're going to realize who's going to be begging after a while, because we really don't need them. They need us.
Absolutely.
And so that's what we need to be thinking about. That's why I say it's all about building communities. We build our communities and say, go do what you do. And that's where we're going.
And then they're going to realize at that point how important it was to have us be a part of a more wider range of what's going on in America today. You hit it on the nail when you said that they've always had this privilege, and now they're seeing that their privilege is failing them. So what to do in these situations now, because it's always worked for them, and now it's not working. So they don't know how to handle that. And I see a lot of them throwing temper tantrums, and they're acting like children now, because they've never been told no before, and had the door slammed in their face, and they're like, oh, well, I can go and commit this crime and get away with it, and it's because my privilege is going to let me get away with it. But now they see that it's not working for them, and they're like, oh, well, I don't know what to do now. And I actually have to be accountable for my crimes and for what I do. And I think a lot of people are putting their foot down. A lot of people of color are putting their foot down, because we were always told by our grandparents and a lot of our older generations, just say yes, ma'am, and yes, sir, and no, ma'am, and no, sir. And whenever we're approached by any type of any of these people, I'm going to just leave it like that. We were always told just to give them the utmost respect. But now a lot of people of color are putting their foot down. They're like, no, I'm not going to tolerate that. I'm not going to take that. And if I'm disrespected, they're going to also be met with disrespect. I'm not going to give someone respect when they're disrespecting me. And a lot of these white people who were privileged are not used to being disrespected as much as they would disrespect us. And they're also seeing that a lot of them aren't able to handle and defend themselves as well as people of color can, because we've had to defend ourselves for so long. So when you line 2 and 2 up, I believe, I think I'm going to bring back a video that had went viral. It was all over the news, and I had to cover it as well, when there was a person of color being attacked by a bunch of privileged boaters and swimmers that were out there on the pier, and there was some people of color that jumped off of the boat and swam all the way to the pier.
That was the Montgomery brawl.
Yes.
Yes.
And they made sure that they understood that, hey, y'all are not going to bring that privilege here and think that you're going to attack someone. And we're not. And a lot of these people didn't know the security guard that was being attacked, but they jumped in to defend that person from being attacked because he was only out there doing his job. And because he told these people no, and they couldn't understand that, they decided to get violent. And we're always painted as the ones that are violent, but then now we're actually seeing who are actually the violent people.
Exactly.
And now Black people have to continue to show them that we're going to defend ourselves. And when we defend ourselves, you're going to lose. So you may want to think twice before you try it again.
Yes. So we're going to transition to your work as an author.
Yes.
And so tell us, what motivated you to write your first book?
It was motivation of what we talked about throughout this entire conversation. It was the backhanded racism that I faced at a lot of these stations. A lot of times the competitiveness, when there's one person that cries wolf, it's usually the Black person that's being put out. I saw a lot of people that it happened to them and they rather suffer in silence. And we, again, like I said, we were always told, oh, well, don't say anything about your news director saying that to you because you're not going to be able to find another job on TV. And I would get told this by other Black male journalists. I would go and console to them and talk with them and try and get them to give me some understanding. And they would tell me, oh, just stay quiet. Don't say anything. And just do what they tell you to do. Even though I knew what they were doing was wrong. They just said, just go with it and just keep quiet because you're not going to be able to find a job anywhere. So I of course, rebelled against that statement. And if I felt like I was being treated wrong, I stood up for myself and I said something. And I've done that at a couple of stations until I started realizing the tips and the tools that I needed to have in order to survive at these stations. And some people don't make it. Some people are committing suicide because once they lose their TV job, they don't know what to do with themselves. So we've seen so many different accounts to where people have committed suicide. There's one story within my book that talks about a Black reporter that was being picked on by his white counterparts, and he reported it to HR. He reported it to the company head, and no one did anything. They painted him as the problem child. They painted him as the person that was the Devo, which is what they referred to him as, and the one that was always causing issues. And they end up firing him after a point of time, even though he was in the right. So he completely went mentally unstable, and he shot the reporter that was teasing him as well as her photographer live on air. Those two people lost their lives. And then as he fled from the cops, he eventually stopped at one point and shot himself and committed suicide. And this was all stemming from these white counterparts at these stations picking and aggravating the person of color, and no one believing him, everyone painting him as the problem child. That's where it all stemmed from. 3 people lost their lives because of that. So I felt that it was important to write this book because I seen it happening so much within the industry. I seen it happening time and time and time again. We actually just lost recently one of our colleagues and a big mentor to me, Chauncey Glover. He was a huge anchor here in Houston, Texas, and he lost his life. we are still trying to figure out what was the cause behind it, but a lot of speculations are saying it was because of a mental breakdown. And a lot of people don't understand how mentally a lot of these reporters, especially reporters and journalists of color, are going through, I'm just going to say it, are going through hell at some of these stations in order to just do their job. And the book is called Keeping News from Breaking You, because I wanted to make sure that I'm telling them not about ways to not let it break your spirit, not let it break your bank account, not let it break your drive and your determination. And here are the ways on how you can make sure you protect yourself whenever you do get within this industry or any industry. It's not just for those that are in the TV industry, but these tips and lessons can be applied to any industry in order to keep people from coming after you and affecting your job and your livelihood. So it teaches you about paper trailing. It teaches you about the red flags whenever you start seeing things happening, about micromanagement, all of those different things, and how to make sure you protect yourselves within the corporate industry and the news industry.
Mm. So can you describe your writing process?
The writing process stemmed from my business. We talked about my business, so it was Joe Sam Media Consulting. A lot of those stories came from some of the clients that I worked within my consulting firm. So they would tell me about what was going on at their stations, and I asked each and every last one of them before I wrote the book, can I use your stories? Can I talk about what you've shared with me within my store? Of course, we're going to keep your name confidential, but we're not going to put it in the book. We're going to make sure we just tell your story and what happened. So my writing process started from there. I made sure that I just laid out a blank sheet of paper, and I started laying out step by step what happened, giving real testaments from people that have gone through these things, including myself, and the steps on how to make sure you protect yourself from walking in the building day one. So the writing started off a little slow because I wanted to really figure out the dynamics of what was happening within the station. And again, like I said, I wanted to get both angles. So I talked with a lot of corporations as well, a lot of different businesses, a lot of different people that were in management positions. I learned about the different styles of management. I have a master's degree in organizational leadership. So we talked about different leadership styles and different leadership structures. And that's where the writing started to form and the book started to come to life, utilizing all of those different interviews that I did with business and corporations, former journalists, former managers, and then branching some from off of my own experiences as well. So it started off slow, but then it progressed. And before you know it, I ended up having 150 pages. And from there, it branched into 300 pages that I had to then dial back down because I knew, nowadays people don't have time to read a 500-page novel. So we had to bring it on back. But my writing style started from there. I wanted it to be powerful. I wanted it to be inspirational. And I also want people to walk away with something once they finish reading the book in order to protect themselves from years and years to come within whatever business or industry they decide to go in.
So how does your experience as a journalist inform your writing as an author?
So it's completely different. So being a journalist and being on air, I had to bring the energy out through my personality, as what we are doing right now through the screen. You have to emote that through the screen and get people to trust and listen to what you're saying through the television screen. Within the book, you want to make sure that they're right there with you. So I went back and I read the book myself in order for me to see if I followed through, if it had a good flow, if I can picture myself saying all of this as well. And I wanted to make sure I got others to read it as well. So we had a focus group within the writing, and they said it was completely different from how I presented on air. On air, I'm lively, I'm fun, I'm giving a lot of energy. Within the book, I became more serious. So my writing was more dynamic, it was more balanced, and it was also more detailed within step one, step A, step B, step C, all of those steps that were in there. And then, of course, I was able to get an opportunity to write more and put more within the book. I mentioned earlier, whenever I'm reporting on air, you only get 1 minute and 30 seconds to tell the story. Within the book, I was able to get as many blank pages as I needed to share what I needed to be shared. So it was completely different. And it opened my eyes to how much pressure writers go through in order to make sure that this book is something that people cannot put down. You want to make sure from when they start from page one that they get to the last page, and then they're not stopping halfway through the book. So that's what I wanted to make sure that was showcased within my writing style compared to my journalism style. My journalism style, you'll see a lot of energy, a lot of personality, a lot of I would say passion within that. Within the book, you're going to see a different person, more of the business side of who I am and more tactical side of who I am.
So, can you tell us what themes do you find yourself exploring most in your books?
So the main theme I would say is that it starts off with the first theme of getting into any type of job. So job searching, jobs, career development. That's the first theme of the book. As we go throughout the book, you're going to see themes of job protection and warnings. So once we get past that era, that theme of the book, you're going to go into pretty much the last theme. You're going to focus on two different themes after that, which one is mental stability, because that's a big, like I mentioned before, you want to make sure that your mental, your self-care is being taken care of. And then the last theme of the book follows the theme of progression, of job searching, of switching and transforming who you are. So sometimes you do have to make a shift. You might have gone to do one thing in life, but now you're making a shift to do something else. So that transformation is the last theme that you're going to follow within the book. So it does take you through a couple of different themes and a couple of different emotions as you're reading throughout the entire book. But like I mentioned before, you want to make sure that it flows. So I wanted to make sure that the book flowed throughout the entire thing, and it ends with something that's going to motivate and inspire people. So that's why the last theme of the book talks about transformation and progression and evolution.
What message do you hope readers take away from your work?
I hope they walk away from reading this book feeling powerful. They're feeling empowered, not just powerful, but empowered to continue on with their career and know that they're intelligent and that they can be successful at whatever they do if they follow the tips and the tricks that have been laid out for them in the book. I want them to walk away with that. I want them to walk into any door knowing that they can also respect themselves and not have to dim their light in order to let someone else shine, that they can also have respect for themselves and make sure that they're getting that respect from everyone else as well, that they're giving out. I'm not going to continue to pour into your cup if my cup is not being poured back into. So I want people to walk away from the book feeling powerful and feeling empowered to be successful within any industry or career that they decide to take on.
So, how has the reception of your books influenced your future writing?
Oh, it's inspired me big time. I'm already planning on writing the next book, and the next book is this book has been really successful. We've done a couple of events, and at every event I run out of books because I didn't expect for it to be so many people at these events and that it would help so many people. We've had 5 events already, and each one of those events have sold out books. I've had to make more and more orders as we speak. One is in process right now. So we're already in the process of planning out the next book, but I want the next book to focus more on my imagination and more on the side that I really, because I'm a big fantasy person, so I love fantasy and anything that deals with branching out, but it still is going to incorporate positive messages in there and really deep-rooted messages. I'm from Louisiana, so I always wanted to write a book about the culture of Louisiana, the spiritual aspect of Louisiana, and also what people are still going through right now. Louisiana was a big hub for slavery, and a lot of those people, a lot of those ancestors of slave owners, and they're still there now. Their generations are still there, and we still see a lot of racism within Louisiana. So when I go back home, I still have to watch out for the things that my grandmother told me about. So the next book is going to focus more on fantasy, but also with deep-rooted messages in there about resilience and progression with as a society. So I'm excited to write that book. This book has inspired me to continue writing. It's been an outlet to tell more stories and hopefully to impact more people.
Let's transition to the work that you do as a community organizer. And what prompted you to get involved in community organizing?
So I've always been a big advocate for community leadership, community organization, from when my nephew passed away. After he passed away, I joined an organization called CASA, which stands for the Court Appointed Special Advocates. And that organization finds what we mentioned advocates to go into the home and to advocate for the child. Because a lot of times you see whenever they're going into the court system and they have to testify about what they're dealing with within the home, many times their abuser is sitting right there in the courtroom, whether it be the mother, the father, the auntie, the foster parent, they're sitting right there. And a lot of times all that person has to do is look at the child one way and it throws them all off. And now they don't want to speak. So the advocate now, instead of having the child go within the courtroom and testify, the advocates go and talk to the children. They get an idea of what's happening. They gain their trust, and then they report back to the judge what the child told them. They don't talk to the parents. They don't talk to anyone else but the child. So they are the advocate for the child. So that got me into community leadership and community organization, the very first thing. And then my work within NAACP, just making sure that anything that was happening unjustly within the communities that I was a part of, that I was making sure that I organized a group of people that felt the same way that I felt, that wanted to see right being done within that community. And the more and more successful events that we were able to put on and organize, the deeper I got within community development, community organization. I do that now within my fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. We do a lot of different community events within Kappa League as well, because we want to make sure that people are on the right track, and we want to make sure that they are given all the information that's needed to make the best decisions in life. And that's always going to be a passion of mine, and I'm going to continue doing it for as long as I can. As long as I can walk, I'm going to be out there organizing a community group or a community session so that people can talk, share ideas, and really just make sure that the positivity is being shared amongst the community, because no one wants to continue to live in a negative energy or a negative mindset. So what can we do together to make a positive and a big change?
I like that. That actually makes a whole lot of sense. How does your work in community organizing intersect with your journalism?
Again, telling stories is powerful. I don't think a lot of people understand how important storytelling is. The only way we can get information from others and understand what others are going through is by talking, what we're doing right now, sharing different experiences, sharing different moments that we've had within our life, talking about the differences of growing up with one another. That's how we learn from one another, and sharing those stories. Tell me about a time where when your grandmother did this. Oh, really? My grandmother did the same thing when I was younger. You start to form bonds with people because you grew up so in a similar way. And even if you are experiencing something that's different, you can learn what that person did in order to make it out of that situation. And you can take those tips with you so that if you're ever in a situation like that, you know what to do now because you've talked to people who've done that, or now you have people that you can call on in order to help you through those situations. So journalism is always a part of anything whenever you're talking about building relationships, building community. And that's what we want to make sure we do. And when we have our community sessions, we talk, we share stories, and that's a part of journalism. Some people bring in their journals. A lot of people still do journals now, and they're writing down what happened within their days. What did we do on this day? What did we do on that day? And they're bringing their journals at these sessions, and they're sharing that with us and what they did in order to make it out of those situations. So storytelling is a big part of our community advocacy, and it's one way that brings us together and also helps us elevate within whatever we're doing.
So can you share a specific community initiative you are proud of?
Yes. So I work with also Houston Community College. I'm telling you guys about all of my different experiences. Houston Community College was a way for me to really advance my community leadership and organization. My role there was called Community Outreach Coordinator. So all I did every day was find opportunities to reach out to the community in order to bring us together and showcase to them how important Houston Community College was and what we were doing within the community and for the community. One of the biggest initiatives that I worked on that still really touches me today was we worked with a teen homeless organization here in Houston that doesn't really get a lot of attention, not on TV, not anywhere. So we worked with them for a while, and we brought them into the school because our students at Houston Community College, they provided free haircuts. They needed to complete their final exams, and they needed people to work on in order to do so. So instead of getting just any people that were already successful within the community, I reached out to the homeless organization, and we organized a trip for those teens that were there that didn't have the funds or the means on getting a chance to have some self-care. And we brought them in, and we got them free haircuts, we got them free meals. We did a complete transformation on a lot of these students, but we didn't just stop there. We also were able to get a lot of the program directors that were at the school and at the university to walk these students around, showcase, what we had to offer at Houston Community College to elevate themselves. 5 out of those, it was a group of 10 students that we brought over. I believe 5 to 8, I'm going to have to get the number again, but 5 to 8 of them enrolled in the college after that event. And they enrolled absolutely for free. So they were able to get into a program that they were able to enroll into a program for their certification for free. They enrolled into Houston Community College, graduated, and then I believe 3 or 4 of them, they finished their process, and they were able to find a job, get themselves out of the homeless shelter that they were in, and now they are building their own families. And that was all from that one event a couple of years ago that I was able to organize. And that has always been one of the highlights of my career, is just to be able to see that this one event actually inspired, and then it actually created purpose for some of these students that didn't see that they had any. And it gave them the education that they needed, and now it gave them the funds that they needed to pull themselves from out of poverty and get themselves within the working class and back on their feet. So that was something that I was really proud of. That was one of the community events that I wanted to continue doing. And now that I have departed from Houston Community College, that's something that they continue to do still till this day. But they branched it out to different shelters and different groups, troubled groups, groups that were in lower income housing, groups that just never thought that they would be able to see a college campus and or even afford a college campus. Now they see that there's a way that they can do so.
Wow. I will tell you this. I'm sure that the people of Houston, especially in that community, will never forget the work that you've done, because that in itself has got to be a main imprint, not just on the community, but just culture-wise, because there's so many people, that refuse to put stake or to have a stake in the community to do their part. You and your organization exemplifies what it is. As we say, we're going to put it on the celebrity status, because y'all are the real celebrities. You see, these are the people they should be following, because, you guys are setting a standard. Not many people would know that, and I'm happy that we can amplify that. But just think about the millions of people around this country that are doing the work that you guys are doing in the community, but nobody knows the work that they do.
Absolutely.
So, it's like, again, I'm so happy to have you here, and I'm so happy to have people to hear this, because, all hope is not lost. Because when people are reaching back like you guys are doing, and you're pulling people forward, that's what we're supposed to do.
Absolutely.
And see, this right here is like, give you guys that star, because that's 5-star right there. That's that 5-star treatment. And you guys are getting the results. I love that.
Yeah, and I appreciate you for even having me on the show to even talk about this here, because this has been something that we've been trying to get out. Now that I'm off of the TV stations, we pitch these ideas to the stations so that they can come out to the events. But I know as a journalist, they say if it doesn't bleed, then it doesn't lead. So if it's not something that deals with murder or crime or anything negative, then you're probably not going to get them out there. And if you do get them out there, then people are going to stop watching by the time your story comes on. So I love that there are shows that you have here to where people can actually tell their story and people actually listen, and they can sit in their car and are heading to work, whatever it may be, cleaning their house, and just sit down and listen to the discussions that we have on your show, and really get something from it. And I think that that's really important. I'm so excited that you're doing this, and that I was able to be a guest and share these opportunities.
So, what do you believe is the most pressing issue facing your community right now?
uh, right now, there's a lot of issues that are coming down. Just recently, it was being told, and this was something that hit us really hard, was that Job Corps has been eliminated. That's one of the issues
Oh,
that hitting us right now within the community, because a lot of people that were in Houston, a
right.
those young teens were in that program. And that was another part of the Houston Community College. We work with a lot of the Job Corps kids and instructors and counselors. And now a lot of people, not only the kids, are not able to finish that program that they were really looking forward to finishing and getting that trade so that they can get to work. But now they don't have a place to live. They're not going to be able to complete the program that they started. And the people that were working there to provide that education to them are now also out of a job. So the
Mm.
job market right now is really affecting a lot of people within not just the community here in Houston, but all throughout the world. Like, a lot of people are finding it hard to find work. We just saw not too long ago, a lot of government workers were laid off. Currently, right now, with the city of Houston, where I'm currently employed at, we just went through a hiring freeze. And while all of that is going on, if not to make more injury to insult, you have the price of groceries skyrocketed. So I don't get how the price of everything is going up, and then people don't even have the job now to be able to afford these things that are going up. I mean, we didn't have it before. So
Mm.
now you're without a job, you really don't have it. So we're facing a lot of issues right now, getting the resources to the people that are without a job, that are looking for one. A lot of the students that were at Job Corps that are now trying to find another way to finish their education and still complete their trade. That's the issues that we're facing. And it's something that I'm working with my organization, Cap Alpha Psi, to figure out some solutions. We have a couple of meetings in a few weeks from now, just to talk and figure out what can we do to help these students and help the people within the community that are going through all of these hardships right now, that are being caused by the leader of the country that was voted in to serve as president again, that's causing a lot of these issues for a lot of individuals. And it's sad to see. I mean, I'm fortunate that I still have a job, because I made it in right before they started the hiring freeze. So had I not made it in before that freeze started, I possibly would be unemployed. So it can happen to anybody. And I feel like a lot of people are afraid right now. A lot of people have lost trust within the country right now, and they don't know where to turn. And I feel like that's the issue, and it's a big issue that needs to be fixed and addressed. And there's only so much that we as small organizations can do to make a dent and put a dent in the issue that's being caused right now.
Mm. So, how do you engage community members in your organizing efforts?
So one way to engage them is tell them that there's going to be free food. That's usually one way that's going to bring everybody out. Your events, but but more importantly, you want to make sure that you're talking about, like I mentioned, issues that are affecting them, things that are going to hit their pocket, that are going to affect their home, or affect their livelihood. So if you are reaching out and you let them know that this is something that we need to talk about and we need your input, that's how we make sure that they're engaged. And for those that can't get out of their home, we're doing sessions like this here. We're engaging them through social media. We're engaging them through online seminars and webinars so that they're informed. And if we're doing any in-person events, we're making sure that we're giving them something that pulls them out of their homes so that they can come and listen to what we have to say. And typically that's what helps. We tell them that they come in to get something free. They're going to be there. But we want to make sure that once they're there, that we are engaging them within the conversation. We're hearing their concerns and we're applying their solutions. We're not just there just to listen to complaints. We're here to get solutions, and we're going to figure out if these solutions that you're providing from the community is going to help whatever we're dealing with. So that's how we're engaging our community, and we're making sure that we continue to engage them with more webinars, with more learning sessions, with more information out there. So sometimes we are going door to door and letting them know, hey, here's what's happening in your community. Here are the people that are running in your local offices, and here's what they want to do in order to change that. And they want you to be a part of it. Come down to these sessions. Let us hear your input and see what we can do to help that voice be heard. So that's how we're going to keep doing that. Every single time that there's anything that we need to talk about, we're going to make sure that we get as many people rallied together. That's the whole purpose of the NAACP. We've done a lot of different rallies, and we make sure that our rallies are solution based and that they're going to be provided with a outcome that's going to be positive for us.
So we do Black History 365.
Yes.
And so when I spoke with you and asked you the most influential person in your life and your career, you responded with the great, the awesome Langston Hughes.
Yes, sir.
So I want you to tell us, why do you consider Langston Hughes the most influential person in Black history for you?
Langston Hughes has been so significant. I want to also mention that my line name, they called me Langston Hughes. So that's what my line name is within Kappa Alpha Psi. And it's because I followed within his footsteps. So I'm also a spoken word poet. And within my college days, I did a lot of spoken word poetry that had a lot of meaning within those poems. And Langston Hughes inspired my writing. He inspired me going into storytelling and me becoming a journalist, because a lot of his publications have been about Black people, people of color. And he didn't focus on the wealthy, Black, successful people. He focused on those that were in middle class and lower income, so that he can share those stories about what they're going through. And I reflected a lot in that, because I came from a middle class community of color. So a lot of things that he talked about within his poems, I could relate to it. And he did it in a way that was entertaining and exciting to read. A lot of the poems that he had, I couldn't put down. And I followed in those footsteps. And from there, I started writing. I started telling a lot of different poems, and I tried to reflect the things that he's done within his career within mine. And I feel like he's inspired some of the greats. Maya Angelou came after him. She was inspired by Langston Hughes as well. And a lot of people know Maya Angelou, but they don't know Langston Hughes. So I always want to make sure that people know who he is and know what he's done for the community and within the community, because he wasn't just a poet and an amazing writer, but he was there on the ground. He was in the community helping with a lot of things that need to, and he was only able to write about these things because he's seen it firsthand for himself. And I felt like we related on so many different levels with one another. And I just feel like he has just always been such an influential person within Black history. And he definitely needs to get the respect that we give to so many other prominent Black historical people within our history.
I love that. And I'm going to tell you something. I gave him credit because I was always in doing some research, about Langston Hughes, because I've got several books of his. But the thing that stood out so much for me is that, remember when all of the authors during the Harlem Renaissance, they all took off and went to Europe. They all went to France. Hughes stayed behind. He stayed there in New York. and he did his thing. And so, just as you say, as all those other folk were thrown in the lights, when they mentioned the Harlem Renaissance, they never really mentioned him.
Mm-hmm.
And I never could understand why. And I will always say that it's because of his strength.
Absolutely.
Because he wrote this one short story. I don't know if you read it or not, but I got a book of his short stories. He did one that's called Who's Passing for Who? You, as a Hughes reader, when you read that, you will realize how relevant it is today.
A lot of what he still can be applied to the lessons that we're being told today. And that's why I feel like it's so influential. It's like he foreseen some of the things that were going to happen that we will be going through. And I think that that's important that we all go back to some of his literature and continue to read some of these things. And you'll find strength within some of these messages that he has within those poems. You'll find the strength that you need because they are inspiring, they're motivational, but they're also informative. And I think a lot of people would be able to benefit from just reading anything that he was able to publish.
Mm-hmm. So can you share a specific piece of Hughes's work that has resonated with you?
Yes, so it was called The Negro Goes to the Bayou. That was one of the works that I just was really, really taken back by, because like I said, it talked about the people of color. It talked about the person that had so much strength and resilience within their own self. And they had to find that deep within themselves. It not only were within their spiritual beliefs, but within their community as well. And I feel like that was one of the stories, like I mentioned, that resonated along with me and what I've gone through within my life, because I've had a lot of challenges, and as they did as well. And they were able to find a way to overcome all of those challenges and obstacles and get out on top. And that was the message that I took from that piece of publication. And I think a lot of people are going to see and be able to relate to that as well, just as much as I did. A lot of young Black men are going to be able to see themselves within that story. And I think that's something that anybody would be inspired by. So that piece of work, I think there was another that I had, it was a poem that I actually had to perform online because I was the performer. So in order to make a lot of my brothers, my frat brothers, entertained, just to give them a little bit of entertainment, I was doing a lot of the poems. I'm gonna have to get back on which one specifically that was, because I'm old. So it's been 13 years since I've been performing online, but that one there had to be one of the most influential pieces that I really enjoyed from his works.
So can you tell us, how has Hughes's writing influenced your own voice as a journalist or author?
It's unapologetic. That's going to be the word that I would use. Like he understood that he didn't care what anybody else had to say. He was going to tell it like it was, and it was going to be what it's going to be. And that's how my journalism has been. I mentioned earlier, I didn't care if this side is going to be appeased or that side. I'm going to tell the truth, and you can take it as it is and do what you please with it. And that's how his writing has influenced mine. He was a strong writer, and I feel like he didn't take any backlash from anyone. He didn't take any criticism from anyone, because he knew what he was saying was going to be impactful to those that read it. And that's what I wanted to make sure I did within my journalism career. And the way he wrote, like I mentioned, was so entertaining. I want people, whenever they're reading any of my work, to be entertained, to be inspired, and to be empowered. And that's what I got from reading his work. So I wanted that same feeling that I felt reading Langston Hughes for when people read any of Joe Sam's.
Okay. That's what's up.
I want that same feeling for them as well. And I'm hoping that one, if not some of my many stories, was able to do that.
So in what ways do you think Hughes's themes are relevant to today's society?
So we mentioned it before, one being resilience within the community. We're always able to come back. after something devastating has happened to us. He talked about that throughout a lot of his publications about civil justice and making sure that we are being respected within this community. Today, we still don't have the respect that we should get, and I think there's still a long way to go before we can even accomplish that. We've made some progress, but we haven't nearly made the progress that I thought should have been made after Martin Luther King made his amazing speech. After that, I felt like people should have been inspired to stop the hatred and the injustice and the racial divide after that speech and after he had to die for what he was preaching about. But it wasn't just Martin Luther King, but it was Langston Hughes as well, fighting for civil justice, fighting for respect from our counterparts, and we still don't have that till today. So a lot of the things that he's talking about, resilience, making sure that we are overcoming a lot of those things that we continue to go through still till today. He wants us to keep pushing, and I want everyone within our community to continue to push on, no matter, despite the things that we're facing. A lot of the things that are happening right now has happened in the past, and it continues to happen. How are we going to make sure we continue to move forward in order to make sure that we're not only protected and we defend ourselves, but we're making sure that we let our counterparts know that it won't be tolerated? And I think a lot of his work spoke about that and gave us the strength that we needed, just like MLK gave us the strength that we needed, and Malcolm X gave us the strength we need. A lot of these civil rights leaders gave us the strength we need to keep going. And it's unfortunate because when you're younger, like when I was younger and I listened to my grandmother talk about a lot of this, I just couldn't believe that that they would have to go through that. And now that I've gotten older and I've experienced some of that myself, maybe not on the same scale that they have, of course, because they didn't have the same rights and freedoms that we have now, but experiencing even just a part of it is mind-boggling to me that it's still going on in 2025, about to be 2026. So it's generational, and I think that the more that they learn from their generations, the more we're going to learn from our generations and people like Langston Hughes and Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X and a lot of these different civil rights leaders on how to continue to be resilient and overcome a lot of the obstacles that we're faced with.
So, what aspects of Hughes' activism inspired your own community work?
I would say his leadership. You know, a lot of times it's hard to stand out as the leader in a lot of these, whenever you're organizing anything that's you're fighting for, that's not just, that's not right. You have to have a strong leader in order to have those follow behind. Langston Hughes was an amazing leader, not just within his writing and his publications and his poetry, but he was a strong leader within the community, and he was able to gain the public's trust. And that's what I always mention, even just within my journalism as well. You want to be able to gain the public's trust and serve as a leader within your community. I always would say, and a lot of journalists of color, you'll hear this from them. They'll say that, you know, I'm the voice for the voiceless. I'm the voice for our community. If you're going to see a black person on air, on TV, I'm going to be the one speaking for our community because I'm listening to what they're saying, and I want to make sure that I'm in leading that effort. I've taken a lot of his strength within me whenever I organize any of my community activities or community events. I want to make sure people understand that they're following a leader that is strong, that's informed, and that's educated about the issues that we're going through and has positive and impactful solutions that are going to take part within whatever we're fighting for. And I think that was something that just always stuck with me. You know, he's multifaceted. Not only is he amazing in this sector of writing and entertainment and the arts, but he's also a strong and independent leader within his community.
And so, last question for you. How do you interpret the balance of hope and struggle in Hughes's poetry?
You said, how do I interpret the balance?
Yep, the balance of hope and struggle.
That's a good question, because it's it's twofolded for me because of course, a lot of the stuff he wrote about uh, has been struggle. Like I mentioned, he talks a lot about injustices and a lot of the struggles that we're still going through now today. Um, and I think he gives just enough to where you understand what. And I'm not gonna, because I'm gonna say this because I don't want to make sure it's confusing for the certain person that may be listening to this. I think that some of his work is going to be important for not just us to read, people of color, but for our counterparts as well, because we understand the struggle, we understand what we've gone through and what we're still going through now, and he gives us hope to continue to go on and to continue to fight for what we believe is right. But I feel like it's important for our counterparts to read his works. You ask any other person about Langston Hughes that's not a person of color, they don't know who he is. And I think that they would understand what we're going through if they actually took a beat to actually sit down and read some of his publications and understand the struggle that people of color have had to face and where we can go if we have not. And we shouldn't just, I hate the word hope, because we keep hoping and hoping that it's going to get better and it never does. So I always try and find a solution base, but he does give us a lot of inspiration to feel that there is going to be a change that's going to happen. When that's going to happen, I'm not sure. But when you read his publications, you do feel the anguish that people have gone through, and that there is space that we can move forward with whatever we're facing within life. But I do think it's important for not just people of color to read those publications, but for everyone to get an idea of just exactly what we've gone through. Because if you read any of his publications, you won't only just be reading it just to read it, but you'll also feel the pain and the struggle, but also the inspiration and the hope that he has within those messages. And I think he does a really great job balancing the two. That's what I get from it. But then I also want more. And that's what I'm basically trying to explain right now. We have to want more than just to hope for things to get better within these injustices that we've been facing. We have to actually do something about it. And then that what we do sticks and continues to go on for generations and generations, instead of us repeating the same mistakes of our ancestors.
Yeah, I have to agree with you about one thing. I think people should read his autobiography. I wonder as I wander,
Mm-hmm.
because that is the one thing. This is the one publication that if they read this Langston Hughes book right here,
Have it.
when they read this book right here, this is the thing that I loved about him, as you say. He's to the point.
Mm-hmm.
He gives you the humorous side, but he's to the point.
Absolutely.
And for those that can interpret what that means, which I don't think a lot of people will be able to if they can identify with him, because he had to go through some struggles that I would say that is one of the things that has plagued our community forever and a day, and that's colorism.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think because he was so fair-skinned,
right,
that a lot of people just failed to want to accept him for who he was and the great writings that he had.
Absolutely. And that's something that we still deal with today too. Just, that's a whole nother topic for another day, but the colorism within, the darker complected people compared to the fair skin, like how we say in Louisiana, the Creoles, it's an issue that's also facing our community that some people, we call it, can pass. If you ever heard of that before, they're passing. So they can go into certain spaces because of the color of their skin that a darker skinned person wouldn't be able to go into. But I'm not going to get into all of that because that's a whole nother conversation.
Just remember that short story I told you. Who's passing for who? When he wrote that, it was a reason why he wrote that. I'm just going to tell you that. So in closing, what are some of the things that some words of wisdom some character things that you want to leave with the audience. That includes how they can connect with you on social media, how they can connect with you on your website, any of those wonderful things. What do you like to leave with us tonight?
Absolutely. So I just want to make sure that everyone just understands, be prideful of who you are, know what you're worth. And when you know your worth, you understand just how important you can be to any situation, and just how important you are to yourself. So be strong, be powerful, and be empowered by different situations. And if you get that within your head, you can be successful within anything. That's the message that I always want to leave people with. And also to live every day as if it's not a mistake. When you wake up, make sure that you're giving your best foot forward within anything that you do, but you're also passing it on to the next generation, because young people, we need it. I didn't have it when I was growing up, and I could have used it. I think anybody can appreciate that. Anyone that's looking to connect with me, you can do so on Instagram. I'm not on everything because they keep coming out with more stuff, but I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, but I'm not on TikTok. I don't have any of that yet. I can't keep up, but the same name on all platforms, Joe Sam, Joe Sam _TV on Instagram. That's the only one that's different, but Joe Sam on LinkedIn and on Facebook. And I am here to answer any questions. If you have any community events that you would like me to be a part of, I am there. So I definitely appreciate being on this platform and you having me on your show. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, for those of you that are watching the show tonight, please understand one thing. As you listen to Joe tell us the stories of journalism through the lenses in which he has seen all of these things that he has talked about, this is real. And with it being real, and with us being in the 21st century, having to face repression at a whole different level than what it was in the 19th and 20th century. Much, much different, because now the thing is, these people are feeling like they're more sophisticated with it when they're really not. So what we have to do is we still have to get together and we have to do our thing together as a community. We have to be strong and we have to make it work. So for all of you that are watching on the YouTube channel, please, if you have not, help us out by subscribing and doing the notifications so you can watch every show live and watch all the shows that have been previously recorded. I want to thank you, Joe, for being with us here with us tonight, and have you all know that we will have another great show for you all tomorrow night on America in Black and White, where we are coloring conversations on America's canvas.